Hello and welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour, the weekly bridge to the future of the piano tech community. I'm David Anderson.
And I'm Ethan Janney. And we're here to ask great questions, and then we'll shut up and listen to some of the authorities, experts, and most outstanding personalities in our little world of pianos.
So, put on your best set of headphones and let's get started.
Welcome everyone to Piano Tech Radio Hour. It's good to see you all yet again.
Welcome.
Both here in Zoom and some of you out there on Facebook and YouTube. And I'll just sort of let a few people filter in before I do the introduction, and then we'll dive in with our renowned guest today, Rick Baldassin. And okay, so I'll just let the next other people filter in after this. I'll give the introduction now. So welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour, which is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online educational resource that offers you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. And remind you, we've got a convention coming up in March, so we'll put links in the chat later to check that out, and we'd love to have you there. I'll introduce our guest for today. That is Rick Baldassin. Rick is president and founder of Baldassin Pianos in Salt Lake City, Utah. He's a registered piano technician, was awarded the Member of Note and also the Golden Hammer Award of 2014 of the PTG. Been inducted into the PTG Hall of Fame. He is an international consultant for several major piano manufacturers. As a piano tech, Rick has been an active and passionate member of the PTG, both serving with his local chapter as well as on the board of the Guild. So, Rick, it's really great to see you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's been, you and I have been in touch over the past several years. So
we have.
It's good to finally connect and have you be a part of things.
It's great to be here.
David, did you have anything you wanted to also launch in about Rick? I know you've known him.
Well, Rick Baldassin has been the quiet voice of my conscience without him knowing about it for about 15 years. I've been, I guess, first intimidated and then just awestruck by the time that I've spent with him and the value that I've gotten from it, both as a piano technician. He's one of the best piano technicians in the world, and he's just a great guy, powerful and humble at the same time. He's just a great guy, and he understands that there's a lot of joy in giving, and that's a human being that I really respect, a human being that's connected to the joy of giving other human beings value on the planet. So he could talk about, he could be here for 3 hours and talk about stuff he's done. I mean, my God, he wrote one of the foremost books on oral tuning that have ever existed. So I'm just so happy to see him here and be involved with us. So
well said.
Welcome.
Well
Rick.
said.
Welcome.
Thank you. That was it was touching. Thank you.
I'll launch in here with kind of things that we might talk about. And of course, folks, the audience, you're here just as important as everyone else. Your questions are really excellent and make for a great session. So I've got a question already from Fred. Rick, how many Faziolis can you buy each year and how much prep do they need? Have you been to Vienna? Two-part question.
I've been to Vienna, but Wusendorfer's in Vienna. Fazioli is in Sicily, Italy. So I've been to Sicily a lot more than I have Vienna, but I've also been to Vienna, and they're both beautiful places. Right now, the production of the factory at Fazioli is about 140 instruments a year for the world. And so usually, if we can get 3 or 4 or 5, that seems to be our fair share. And they're wonderful instruments. I would say that they require probably the least of prep when they come out of the box, but because of the nature of the expectations upon them, they're always expected to be at the very highest level. And so from that standpoint, perhaps because of those expectations, they need the most prep, but not because of lack of finesse at the factory. I hope that answers your question.
Sounds like a pretty good answer. I am curious, again, from my vantage point, I think other people might have a little bit more extensive knowledge of you. What was there a turning point in your career, or has it just kind of been a level progression? Do you see anything as a specific place where things change directions for you?
I do, and it was the information that eventually became the On Pitch series in the journal that was later published as a book, and that material and a commitment that I had to that material, and understanding that that it was something that was really needed, and that it would change the face of how people understood and saw aural tuning. That really launched my career. The beginning of my career is interesting because when I was in college at Brigham Young University, I had experience doing musical instrument repair, and so I was working on the basses and the cellos and violins and stuff, and but we didn't have a shop. But I soon learned that the piano technicians had a shop, and when you're working on stuff, you need drill presses and sanders and things, and they had them. Yeah. And so I became good friends with them. And one spring, they came to me and said, we are trying to restart the piano technician associate degree at Brigham Young. And we put in our application. We've been told by the university that we need 12 applicants to get the program approved. And we're willing, if you would be willing to put your name down as one of the 12 applicants. And I said, well, sure. I was about ready to graduate at that point, but I thought, what the heck? So a couple months later, they contacted me and said, well, we got the program approved. That's the good news. Now, with your permission, we'd like to remove your name from the list, because essentially I was a shill. Okay. I wasn't really looking to get into the program.
Right.
And they said, so we'd like to have permission to remove you because we have 19 applicants for the 12 spots that we have.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, fine, but let me ask you this. What number am I on the list? And they said, well, you're number 1 on the list. You're the first person we signed up. And I said, so then you're telling me, since I'm number 1 on the list, that if I want in, I'm in because I'm number 1 on the list. And they said, yes, that's true, but we need to know by tomorrow. And I was kind of at a place, I had just finished 5 years of school to get my music performance degree playing the double bass. And I was a little bit burned out and looking forward to maybe trying something else. But I thought, here I am, I'm graduated, I have a degree in music performance. And other than playing gigs in a rock band, I'm pretty much unemployed. And this maybe could be something, a career that I could be in a music related field and make a living. And so I entered the program and eventually graduated from it. Although in the end, the university denied awarding me the degree because they have, universities always have policies, and I already had a bachelor's degree, and it was against their policy to award an associate degree if you already had a bachelor's degree. And so I have all the credits and I earned the degree. I just don't have the certificate. But anyway, that was how I got started. And the story of how the On Pitch series came to be is an interesting one. I wrote about it in the book, but I passed my RPT exam, I think in 1980, and shortly after I passed, my chapter told me, okay, it's your turn to present.
Oh, quick interjection here.
Okay.
Careful with your mic when you touch it. You get a little bit of fuzz.
Am I touching it, or
yeah,
is it?
You were touching it like subconsciously.
Okay,
No
I'll
problem.
touch this side.
There you go.
So where was I? Oh, so they said you have to teach. This was like maybe in August, and that May, I had the interesting opportunity of being able to have dinner with Jim Coleman Sr., who was teaching at the Utah Intermountain Convention, and it was just him and me. And he said, well, how are you doing? And I said, well, I just passed my exam, but I'm, as a bass player, the bass of the piano doesn't sound right to me. It doesn't sound like when I'm playing in an orchestra or playing octaves with the cellos, it doesn't sound the same. And he said, well, that's because of inharmonicity and so on. And he said, well, tell me, what test are you using to test your work when you're doing, when you're tuning the bass? And I said, well, I was taught to use the minor third major sixth test for tuning the bass. And he said, well, that's an excellent test for the bass. And then he made a statement that made the light bulb go on. He said, well, he didn't say, he said the minor third major sixth test is the test for a 6/3 octave. And the light bulb went on at that moment, because I thought, well, if the minor third major sixth test is the test for a 6/3 octave, then the other tests that I've been taught must be the test for some other type of octave. And the real revelation was they're all different. And at that point, when oral tuning classes were being taught, it was always, tune the fourths wide, tune the fifths narrow, and tune the octaves pure. And what became obvious at that point was the octave is never pure. It can't be pure. It's always going to be beating someplace, and we have to decide where to make it not beat. And so this was the impetus when I had to teach this chapter meeting. I thought, well, what the heck am I going to teach about? I've only been in the guild a year, and I just became an RPT, and these guys all know a lot more than I do. But I started thinking about the thing with Coleman, so I took a piece of blank paper and started drawing little keyboards and mapped out the interval tests that I knew and determined, which type of octave they were for. And I went and presented this at the chapter meeting. And my teachers at that taught me at the university didn't have any idea about it. Nobody really did. And they were all, it was like they were all just eating it up. And so a short time later, I was in Colorado, and I had been invited to go to a Baldwin training session at Aspen, and Jack Krefting, who was he was the technical editor of the journal at the time, was the teacher. And so while I was there, I had the opportunity to show him my handout from this class. And he looked at it and he said, well, this is very interesting, but you can't just, we can't just publish a handout like this. You're going to have to write over several months and explain all of this. And so it became a series that was very well received. And then shortly after that, Jack asked me to be the tuning editor. So in answer to your question, you can see how in a very short time, this really springboarded my career. And
interesting.
And, I mean, I don't know what to say. The rest is history.
Yeah.
It was first published, I think, almost 40 years ago.
Wow.
What was the year? 80 what?
I'm trying to remember exactly, but I think the articles in the journal came out in about 82 or 83. Wow. So it's been 40 years.
Oh,
and to your knowledge, this is so deep.
Let me cut in here real quickly. Save that question, David. A couple of things.
Okay.
One, for those on Facebook and YouTube, we're going to sign off. So if you really want to continue with us, hear David's question and continue, then check the link in the chat and you can join us. And I think Rick, the microphone, I think it's rubbing on your face a little bit. I don't know if there's a way to like pull it off. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's better. I think it's good.
Is it okay?
Yeah, I think it's good. Okay,
Yeah.
David, hit it with your question, and we'll let you guys continue.
So, in your experience, was your class the first time that you had heard or that people had written about, expanded octaves always?
Obviously, the material was known. I mean, Jim Coleman knew about it because he was the one that planted the seed that that made things come to life. But I believe I'm the first person that ever cataloged it and explained quantified it, and so on and so forth. So I don't claim to have invented the material, but the reason that it all clicked for me, other than I believe there was a healthy amount of inspiration involved, but the main reason that it could click for me was because I had studied music theory. And so when he said that to me, all of the interval ratios and things like that I had studied in college. And so, what On Pitch was an understanding and an application of music theory to piano tuning.
Right. Unbelievable.
I've got a question in the chat. Should we hit that?
Sure.
Why don't you hold that and allow Rick to talk about this latest release he's got?
Well, as many of you know, I mean, I republished the On Pitch book a number of years ago because it was out of print, and the PTG did not have the publisher plates for it, and so it was obvious that it needed to be recreated. There was a demand for it, and so I went through the original manuscript of the original book and basically rewrote it. So the book that we did, I think in 2007, is not the same as the original book. The illustrations were improved, and there were a lot of the explanations with a little more experience. I was able to write it so that it read a little bit more like a book. The original book was a compilation of the on-pitch articles that appeared in the journal. And so it read a little bit like a compilation of articles, although we did go through to try to make transitions between the chapters, but the new one was a lot better. So since that time, when I started work as the head concert technician and head of piano technology at Brigham Young, this would have been about 6 years ago, I had a very bright student named Jason Castle. And Jason was in commercial music and needed a capstone project to finish his degree, because he was they had a choice of either doing a capstone project or a senior recital, and he chose to do a capstone project. And he had been doing recording engineering as part of his degree, and that was his emphasis in commercial music. So he proposed a CD recording that would be audio examples of certain tuning tests, and he wanted my opinion about it. And I said, well, this is all well and good, but well before you were born, I wrote a book about all of this, and the material's a lot better than the material you're proposing. So I propose we do the audio recordings for examples in my book. And he was very excited about that. And we did do, it was the first part of the book, we did these audio recordings for, and it really helped. Part of the problem with the book was you had to sit with the book at the piano and try to read what was in the book, and then try to play what was, what the examples were, and make sure you were hearing the right thing, and so on. And so we completed his project, which he passed with, by the way. And then I said to him, I've had an idea, and the idea is this. The problem with having this CD is now we have to have the book, right. We have to have a piano, and we have to have a CD player, and try to juggle all of this while we're trying to get through it and learn it. And so I said, what if we recorded the audio examples, but instead of it being on a CD, it's on a DVD. And instead of having to sit at the piano, we make an animation of the piano so that you can sit at the computer and you can see which notes are being played. And then instead of having to read the book, I'll narrate it. And so we started the DVD series, and that was when you got the first one. I think we came out with the first DVDs, David, that when I gave it to you, and that was in
that's right,
was in 2015, and we put out about one a year. And so in 4 years we covered the whole book. So there are 4 volumes of the DVD now available. And we decided, even though it wasn't part of the On Pitch book,
can I cut in real quick, because I want to make sure people know how to get what you're talking about. So this is all at onpitch.com, at least the DVDs.
Yep.
Right?
And the book. Mm-hmm.
And the book. Okay. And then you have volume 5 here. And
that's sort of the thing. Uh-huh. So we decided to do volume 5, which was going to focus on the Baldassin Sanderson temperament, which, was a wonderful experience that I had with Dr. Al Sanderson. And we came up with this temperament. We taught it several places, and we made volume 5 of On Pitch is now a DVD, and it's ready to go out. And so for everybody today, anybody that goes to onpitch.com, and if you put the promo code radio hour, you can get you'll be pre-ordering volume 5. It isn't quite ready to ship yet, but you'll be pre-ordering it, but you'll get a $5 discount.
Cool. Thank you.
So
well, is that active, or is that something you'll put
it's
in?
Active. It was active as of yesterday. So if they go on, even right now, they should be able to go on and pre-order volume 5 with that promo code radio hour.
Cool.
And get the discount.
Awesome. So, one word, lowercase.
Wow. Thank you, Rick.
One word, lowercase.
Perfect. I'll put that in the chat.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about that, and it, it's the Baldassin Sanderson temperament, has an interesting story behind it, and I guess this is my time to talk about whatever I want to talk about. So when I was
we do have some questions in the chat, by the way, so let us know when you want to hit.
Well, are there questions that we need to answer now? Because we're kind of segueing to something else. So are the questions related to On Pitch or my life, or?
Let's see here. Let me just go through them and check and see if we want to address any.
Let's let
David,
Rick roll.
Let's let Rick roll. We always have a limited amount of time here. There's always questions left, so we'll let him continue to roll. And we'll get to
I'll get through this, and there's maybe one other important thing that I wanted to cover before we go. But the Baldassin Sanderson temperament happened while I was the tuning editor for the journal, and I had several contributors that had submitted temperaments to be published. And it was interesting because there were 4 of them, and they all started out the same. The first steps were, tuning a series of contiguous thirds in the F octave. But what was interesting was, once you've tuned those 3 thirds, there's no more thirds you can tune. And so you have to tune some other interval. So each one of those systems went in a different direction. And so I had written this article that compared these 4 different systems. And I was teaching at a convention in New England, and Al Sanderson has been had been a longtime friend, and I always made a point to stop and see him whenever I was in town. So I went over to see him, and I brought the manuscript, and I said, Al, this is a little complicated. Would you please just read this for me and tell me if everything's okay? And he started reading it. And he'd go down the page and he'd say, oh, well, this is where, this person's doing okay, but they went wrong here. That's a dangerous thing that they did there, or whatever. And we started saying, well, what if we did this instead? And then we could do this and that. And all of a sudden, in the space of about an hour, the whole temperament came to be. The sequence came to be. And I don't know if any of you have ever had that type of experience where you just feel like pure knowledge is just flowing into your brain.
Absolutely.
And you're working with somebody that's so incredibly intelligent and brilliant and knowledgeable that he would say something, and that would spark an idea in me, and that would spark an idea in him. And all of a sudden there were self-correcting steps, and there were all of these things that none of the other systems came close to approaching. And so it was just one of those days that I'll never forget. And and I had the opportunity to teach that with him for several years at PTG conventions and things. And so Jason and I saw this as something that could also benefit from the DVD format. And so we went through, and all of the steps are outlined with audio examples, and there's other training kind of materials in it that are really good. And so this is the content of the DVD 5, is the Baldassin Sanderson temperament, which, I really feel like in conjunction with Al is one of my major contributions to our industry.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for the offers and everything like that. Appreciate everything. Should we head into some of those questions? Or?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. Let's go back here and check out what David Skolnick said. He said, "Hi Rick, can you speak to some or all unique concepts or execution of Fazioli? Materials, down-bearing? Any thoughts on that?"
Well, it's interesting because people often ask me, what makes this piano so great? And my answer is, I don't think there is any one thing that makes it so great. What makes it so great is that every aspect of it is done so well that, it's a 0.5% here and 3% there, and you add all of these things up, and the result is really quite magnificent. So I don't know that I would say that the design concept it's not a copy of anything, but it also isn't anything that is dramatically different from what we consider, the modern piano to be. It's just that it's done so incredibly well. Right. And the people that are working on it are so incredibly skilled. They're like 40 workers in the factory. They cross-train a little bit, but each of them has a sort of a specific thing that's their baby. And whether that's setting the down bearing, or whether that's notching the bridge, or whether that's setting the touch weight, that's somebody's job. And they're so incredibly proud of what they do that they do it. They do it so well, and these people have made that job in the factory their career. And, that's very different, I would say, than certainly most of the piano factories in the world today. I'm sure there are some that are that way, but others, it's just like, oh, well, this is a job, and as soon as I know how to string the piano well enough, I'm going to go out on my own and make a living stringing pianos, because I can make more than I can in the factory. But here it's completely different, and the attitude, the work ethic, the pride that these people have in the piano is really unbelievable. And I'm sorry, but it draws me into another interesting story. When I started working for Renner in 1989, we made a trip to Germany to start the product line and so on that Renner USA offers now. And as I was finishing my meetings with them, they said, "Well, where are you going to go now that we're done with the business, the people at Renner?" And I said, "Well, as far as I know, all eight of my great grandparents came from one little spot in Italy, and we're close enough that we're going to take the train down to Italy, and I want to see the town where my grandfather was born." And they got really excited, and they said, "Well, if you're going to Italy, are you going to see Mr. Fazioli?" And I said, "Well, I don't know Mr. Fazioli. I don't know him well enough to show up on his doorstep. And they said, just 1 minute. So they picked up the phone and called Mr. Fazioli and said, Mr. Fazioli, there's a gentleman here that's been consulting with us all week, and you need to meet him. His name is Rick Baldassin, and he'll be there on Tuesday. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be there on Tuesday. And so my wife and I, sitting in the hotel room in Italy, we went down very near to where, the closest town that was big enough that it had a hotel to where my grandfather was born. And we had this map of Italy, and I was looking for Sicily all over the map, just everywhere, looking for Sicily, Italy. And finally I found it. And the reason that it took me so long to find it was because I was looking for it every place in Italy except where we were. And the factory in Sicily is about it's about 40 kilometers away from where my grandfather was born. And so in the process of all of this, my first meeting with Fazioli, which was like the most incredible revelation, piano experience I've ever had. I also discovered that I have, I met first cousins of my father that were still living, and second cousins of mine, and so on. And so I discovered my family, and I discovered this great piano. And every time I go back to Italy, I get to see both. And it's really fantastic.
Wow. Fascinating story.
That's an amazing story. Thank you.
You
Yes.
bet.
More questions from the peanut gallery, Mr. Jenny?
Yes. This is I'm sure you could say a lot about this or something brief, but Juan Alberto Schulte says, what can you say about unisons?
It's interesting. I've never done any writing about tuning unisons, but I have strong feelings about it, and it's something that I'm still in the process of learning. So in the unison, there's been some talk that maybe we should make the unison a little out of tune, so that it lasts longer. There also has been some thought that we should, like, if we use the major third, if we tune if we tune a major third below while we're listening to test the unison, that it should sound the same with one string or three strings or whatever. And what that means is that we would be perfectly matching the fourth partial of that unison. In other words, that it would be perfectly beatless at the fourth partial. And I'm not sure that idea is right either. I think my idea is, with the unison, there's an infinite number of partials that, each of those strings have all of the same partials in them. And so as high as we can hear them, they're going to beat. And because of inharmonicity and small imperfection in, as good as the piano can be made, it can't be made perfectly. And so there are going to be small variations in the lengths of those three strings and in the terminations of them, and so on and so forth. And so I think our job is that we have to listen to the whole unison and try to make it sound as solid, as beatless as possible. And so now that creates another problem, because the pitch of the strings change over time. So it's like, well, then when in time do we try to make the whole thing as beatless as possible? And when I tune the unison, I tend to play the key not super rapidly, but I try to just I try to have I try to play it like this, and then I try to coordinate my hand movements so that I'm listening right when I hit the note. Right when the hammer strikes the string, I'm listening on the attack, and I'm listening for it to be solid on the attack in the first pass, okay? And that can really speed you up because, if you're listening for 2 or 3 seconds every time before you move the hammer, it takes a long time to tune the piano. But if you're moving something every half a second, it speeds the process up. So I go through and do that, and I'm listening for so that everything is solid and in tune right on the attack. And I know that I've heard others say, no, you have to listen for a longer period of time because of this pitch change. You need to find this happy average, and I thought about it, and really my feeling is that in most music, how long does a 16th note last? It doesn't last 2 or 3 seconds unless the music is very, very slow. The notes happen very quickly, and they need to sound in tune when they're on the attack, because after that they can change a little bit, and it adds color and variety. But if they're not in tune on the attack, then it really detracts from the whole musical experience of the piano. And so now the downside to this is if you hit too quickly and don't listen long enough, it takes a few milliseconds to hear the phase shifting, to hear that little wah going on. And so you have to listen long enough that you can hear that. Otherwise you can shortchange yourself and say, well, it's on, right on the very attack. It's totally on, but a half a second later it isn't. Well, a lot of notes do last a half a second, and so you have to make sure that it's solid, but that you've listened long enough that you didn't think you put it in tune, but really it wasn't, because you didn't listen long enough. So I hope that answers your question. And I'm trying to remember, are you from Argentina? Is that right? Or I met you and you're tuning in from South America.
Yes, yeah, that's where Juan's from. Argentina.
Well, awesome. What a great dialogue.
Nice to connect with you again, and hope that we have the chance to see each other in person as soon as we can meet again in person in the future.
Donna Bird asks, is that first chart that you mentioned, is that available as some type of handout? People access that, or is that long gone from the variations?
The first chart, I'm sure in a file box someplace, it may still exist. Donna, this was before computers, so things were typed up on typewriters, and the graphics were glued in with that glue stick and put together, and someplace I'm sure they exist. I just don't have any idea where.
But it would be safe to say that something similar, or maybe even more polished, is within your book. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, because it was the basis for everything. In fact, let's see if I can find it in the book. There's an illustration. Okay. Do you see this illustration? That was from the original handout.
Wow.
And what everybody wanted to know when I taught the class was, what is the meaning of all these trees? And so they thought that my my very nicely done illustrations were
a row of trees.
A row of trees. Okay, that was how my presentation was first appreciated. But
Wow.
anyway, I must have had one copy still available in 2007 because I put it in the book. I think the illustrations in the book they look a lot better, and in the DVD they're really neat because as the notes are played, they change color so that you know when the note's being played. And the other thing that's really cool about the DVDs is we were able to use Jason's expertise to create very narrow bandpass filters so that if we wanted to hear the beat of a major third, for instance, we could narrow the entire tone spectrum down to this little area where only we could hear this beat. And so it really allows you to hear the beat that we're listening for when we tune, and we would apply the filter, and then we take the filter away and play the example again so that you could train your ear. Oh, this is where I'm listening. This is what I'm listening for.
Awesome.
That's great. Very, very useful. Sai's sister had a comment. I started out as an ETD only tuner. I never forgot how my mind was blown when you taught coincident partials in on pitch by telling me to set my ETD on A4 and then tune A3.
It's interesting, and you'd have to understand the climate of the piano technicians at that time. It's very different than it is today. It's all, you know, it's a little bit analogous to the climate in our country today, how people see things and so on, as compared to what it was in 1960 or whatever. But at that time, there was ETDs were fairly new. Most of them were not very sophisticated, and they had a very bad reputation because most of the people that used them didn't know how to use them well, and they weren't getting good results. And so as a result, ETDs were getting kind of a bad rap because the result wasn't sounding very good. And one of the things that occurred to me in my meeting with Jim Coleman and the light going on was, anything that I want to do by ear, I can do with my ETD, and anything that I want to do with my ETD, I can do by ear. I just need to know the translation. And so part of the purpose of the On Pitch book, the subtitle to the book was the integration and equation of aural and electronic tuning techniques. And so that's what Sai was talking about, was anything that we want to do or accomplish by ear, we can do with the machine, and anything that we would want to do with the machine, we can do by ear. My opinion is, you're best off if you're fluent, maybe not equally fluent, maybe you're not ambidextrous, but you're better off to know both worlds. And now electronic tuning aids are very sophisticated and very well accepted. And the problem is that people are neglecting to hone and understand and have the aural skills necessary to know when the piano's in tune. And because that's the one thing that the ETD can't do. The ETD cannot say, okay, the piano's in tune. It will only do whatever it is you tell it to do. And if you do a good job, then chances are good it'll be in tune. But my feeling is that I have to know. I have to be able to say, okay, I have tuned the piano for you. I have left it in tune. For me, every day, that's with some combination of ETD and aural skills. And so my encouragement to everybody out there is to try to become a little more fluent. You know, you may be a little stronger in the ETD. Take some time every day, spend a few minutes on every piano and practice your aural skills. And if you don't have an ETD, there are a lot of things that are just simpler with an ETD than they are doing by ear. You know, raising pitch, for instance. There are a lot of things that are just easier to do, so that you can do the pitch raise and have the piano close and your ears aren't blown, so that you've got some chops left to finish the tuning. So anyway.
Yeah, I have to say too, if anybody wants to pledge a commitment here to do what Rick just said, on each tuning, if you're an ETD tuner, just to spend a little bit of time practicing with your ears and getting to know that better. I think that's it's something that it's very useful to do, but I think it's very easy to let it slip if you got that ETD.
Well, we're always under the gun. We're pushed by time. Time is money. If we get done quicker, we make more money, we think. One of the things, if you're predominantly using the ETD, even if you don't practice all of the aural tests that are in on pitch, you can still listen to how things sound. And after a while, you will become acquainted with, what does a fourth that's tuned correctly sound like, and when does it sound bad? And you can do that just by spending some time listening to the job, instead of just stopping the display and tuning the unison and moving to the next note, which is a trap that I think a lot of us fall into. Or can fall into. If we just spend a little time listening, then our ears become acquainted to what does it sound like when it's in tune.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something, David?
I was. I've had a strong intuitive feeling that tuning a piano with your ears is about the deepest focused learning experience your ears can get. One of the deepest, one of the most focused. And that therefore it becomes a portal for voicing and for really being able to hear other tones.
Yeah.
Your feeling about that?
It really is, and it's I feel like I have to be able to pronounce the piano in tune. I have to have enough confidence and enough skill and enough knowledge to be able to do that. I saw
world-class level. Yes, absolutely.
I saw that we had a notice come up saying that we're going to wrap up pretty soon.
Yeah, about 4 or 5 minutes we'll be done.
Yeah, there's something. Let's see. I can either just tell you about it, or I can pull up a YouTube. But you can pull up a YouTube afterward. When one of the things about aural tuning that makes it hard is trying to count beats. Counting beats is terrible.
It is terrible.
But as musicians, if you've ever played a musical instrument, all of us are familiar with tempo. And, tempo is how fast the pulse of the music is going. We're used to that. We can feel that really well. And so if, for instance, one of the hardest things to learn can be, how fast is 7 beats a second for tuning the first third? And, if you're there trying to watch your watch and the seconds go by and trying to divide that into 7, you're going to go crazy. But if you have a metronome or find a piece of music that is the tempo is 105 beats per minute, that's 7 beats a second. And so I know we have people here from all age groups, but David, do you like yourself some Stevie Nicks?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, if you dial up the edge of 17 and listen to the guitar riff at the beginning of it, that's 7 beats a second.
Yeah.
That's 7 beats a second. Okay. And when I was in music school and studying conducting, they'd say, well, you can't stand in front of the group and pull out your metronome and decide how fast the piece is going to be. It's got to be in your head. And so they'd have us memorize, okay, 132 is this piece, it's the overture from this opera or whatever. And so, get your metronome. You've listened to all of these pieces of music all your life. All you have to do is figure out the ones that are the right tempo so that you can go. And I gave you one. It's certainly not the only example, but it's an example of a well-known piece. And if I asked David, if we zoomed in on him and asked him to play air guitar for us of the beginning of that piece, we would have 7 beats a second. It's that simple.
That's right. And it's your whole being hears and feels that.
Right.
It's not like a counting thing. It's like, a crucial part of my temperament is very early setting the C to E third. Mm-hmm. I've burned that in how many times in my life? If my body doesn't know that sound, I'm not paying much attention.
Right. But if you're first starting, you have to have some way to learn that.
Exactly.
And so while you may not have known exactly, what the speed of that CE third is, there's some song out there that's going to have the right tempo to let you create it. And that song so well that you can just pull it up in, your head.
That's brilliant.
So if we're doing the edge of 17, how fast does it go? It goes. Okay, that's 7 beats a second, and it wasn't because I was counting 7 beats a second. It's because I was playing the edge of 17 in my head.
Right.
Okay. So.
And that's my point. Your body, your whole unit knows that speed.
Right.
It just does. You don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
That's to me the root of learning about tuning is feel it. Just feel it. Feel it.
Okay. There it is. Did I have it right? When I did it, I have it right?
Exactly right.
It's, it's imprinted. So if you want to know what the next contiguous third up is, then you in the DVD it'll have the tempo, and you can go search and find a song that has it, and then you'll just know. And after a while, you'll just know. So anyway,
right.
Excellent tip.
That's right.
We are right at time here, and we've just passed it. So I'll give a quick wrap up. Of course, as always, when we have a knowledgeable, wonderful, respectable guest, we run out of time for all the questions and things we want to address. So we'll have to have you back again sometime soon. I'll just say we put some links in the chat. One is for people to sign up for the convention. Another one for a feedback form if you want to tell us how we're doing. Also, thank you to our sponsors for the convention, Schiedermeyer Celesta and Piano Buyer. Make sure to click those links and learn more about them. And I put the YouTube link in the chat. Also, by the way, folks, if you want to copy the chat, you can. There's a little ... at the bottom right. Click on that and hit Save Chat at the top of the options. So if you wanted to keep any of those links, make sure to go to Rick's website. He gave that coupon code. So that's onpitch.com, and you can type in Radio Hour. Was that right?
Radio Hour, all lowercase.
All lowercase, no spaces.
That's
the
promo
code. Thank you very
code.
much. Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right.
Rick, what a pleasure, dude. Thank you.
Good to be with you, man. Good to be with you.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.
Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. Remember that you can catch us live online every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
That's right. Go to pianotechradio.com to register so you can interact live and ask questions of our guests.
See you next week.